A lawful arrest to a crime. Let's bring in our think tank to peel back the layers on this, try to figure it out. We got a great one with us tonight. Sarah Flack, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor with us. Michael Bixon, criminal defense attorney. And Suri Shada Jimenez is with us, another great criminal defense attorney. And it sounds like we have a fourth guest too, but that's okay. We know we're all at home. Sarah, when did this go from being a lawful arrest to a crime? At what point? When does that happen?
Well, Vinny, from the looks of it, it looks like it happens almost immediately. I mean, from the temperament that those officers had, they're immediately cursing. You know, whether or not legally they escalate it to a full-blown arrest, I think the argument is that they do. They're cursing, they're aggressive, and he's clearly terrified.
Okay, Sarah, let me stop you there, right there. 1 second, Sarah. All right, but I really want to break this down. Because this is the case prosecutors are going to make in the courtroom. The cursing, I understand. All right, so what's the crime? Tell me when the crime starts and what the crime is. Because I'm trying to go through everything that we finally have, that's finally been released, to figure this out. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, that's the question. Is he's stopped, he's driving the car, he's asking what's going on. He doesn't know. They're not being very clear with him about why he stopped in the first place or what the encounter is for. He's asking questions, and they're at the same time screaming and cursing, telling him to put his hands on the steering wheel, keep his foot outside or inside the car. So there's a lot going on. But they don't ever make it clear from that first moment what, in fact, he's under arrest or what he's detained for. They don't make it clear, according to this video, at all.
All right, Michael Bixon, at what point, at what point are police officers committing a crime, and what crime are they committing? When during this entire incident that begins with they're walking into the store and they talk to the clerk to George Floyd is now dead?
I think it really starts at the moment that you see George Floyd stop responding. When he stops breathing, when he's just laying there unconscious. And, you know, it's hard to tell at what point it goes from unconscious to death. But I think at that point, and they don't render aid, and they're still applying compression both to the back and to the neck, I think you start going much more into the territory of murder. And you're well past any point of like lawful arrest at that point. It's really, I think, you see him there on the ground, you know, but it's really, you have compression both on the back of the neck, on the back of the spine. As soon as he stops breathing, they should have been rendering medical aid. It didn't happen. I think at that point,
right,
really when you're starting to look at a crime.
Got you 100%. I'm trying to prosecute the case because I want to prosecute this case. What not rendering aid is the murder, or how are we piecing this together inside a courtroom?
No. Not
12?
Rendering aid is not the murder, to be clear. No.
Okay.
But it's what leads to it. It's when it starts.
What are the actions? What am I arguing to the jury? What did they do that equals murder?
Knee on the neck, knee on the spine, basically not allowing him to breathe.
At the moment they got him on the ground. Suri, from your perspective, when did this turn? Did this turn at the moment, like Michael's saying, they put him on the ground and then have one officer on the neck, one on the spine, another on the legs? Is that the point where the crime starts?
I absolutely agree. I think that the knee on the neck is when you start having the criminal intent. Actually, and I would like to rephrase the way you put the question. You said, when does it go from a lawful arrest to a crime? I believe is when does it go from an unlawful arrest to a crime? There was a lot of things that were going on that are not proper. And there are things that we should be arguing in a courtroom when he's facing whatever criminal charges. That is...
Okay, let's back it up. Sorry, I want to be very clear. I want to hear this. I want to hear this, exactly. So let's back it up. We're backing up the video, right? We got this huge video tonight. At what point are police doing something they should not be doing? What's the first thing that is unlawful, okay? We're not saying it's a crime, but you're saying it's unlawful, okay? So what is the first unlawful act that the police are committing that we've seen now in this video that has now been released to the public?
In my opinion, let's make it clear. They have reasonable articulable suspicion that somebody might have put in a fake bill. So they have the right to go talk to this person. So they should have gone up, walked up and tap on the window. Hey, please step outside. I want to talk to you. The moment he puts a gun to his face, just because he's not doing what he wants him to do, That point, that's an aggravated assault. However, the officer has immunity because he's investigating a crime. So we might have to say anything that comes after that when he's pointing a deadly weapon at his face and giving him commands. At that point, he's under arrest. At that point, anything that comes out of George's mouth is not admissible. He is under arrest. He's not free to go. He has not been Mirandized. So everything the officer is doing is hurting the investigation. He is hurting the case. It is this type of training and these type of officers that are frustrating when you're a prosecutor, because you're looking at a solid crime that was committed and you have an officer that's way too excited to even handle a basic interrogation, and you ruin the whole case. And this is why prosecutors should be up in arms about this type of behavior. And then this continues to escalate and escalate.
And this is why we bring in the think tank. We bring in the smart ones with the expertise and the experience so we can figure this stuff out. We got a lot more to talk about. We're going to break down the video piece by piece when we come back.
Before they drive off, they park like here. It's a fake bill from the gentleman.
I hope this. The driver in there?
Yeah. Which one?
The blue one over there.
Which one? Yep, that's right.
Okay. Something like that.
All right, that's how the George Floyd case began. It was a call from someone at that store, and then you saw the clerk from the store point out the car that George Floyd was in, alleging that George Floyd had just passed a counterfeit 20. Then the officer approaches the car, and I'm going to play this for you again. As he approaches the car, a lot of people have been talking about him pulling his gun out. And part of the explanation we've heard is that keep an eye on George Floyd's right arm, his right hand. Officer asking to see both hands, doesn't see the right hand, and the right hand allegedly is crumpling up other counterfeit 20s and getting rid of them. That's been alleged. Don't know if it's true. It's up to a trial to figure it out. But let's watch that piece of the video one more time.
Let me see your hands.
Damn, man.
Stay in the car. Let me see your other hand.
I'm sorry.
Let me see your other hand.
Please, Miss Officer.
Both
I didn't
hands.
do nothing.
Put your f***ing hands up right now. Let me see your other hand.
All right. What I do though? What do we do?
Put your hand up there. Put your f***ing hand up there. Jesus Christ. Keep your f***ing hands on the wheel. Keep your f***ing hands on the wheel.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry, Miss Officer.
Who else is in the car?
I got shot. This is my friend.
Put your foot back in.
I'm sorry, Miss Officer. I'm so sorry. God dang, man. Man, I got shot the same way Miss Officer before.
Okay, well, when I say let me see your hands, you put your f***ing hands up.
All right, a lot of people reacting to this. Let's bring back in our think tank. Michael Bixon, why is the officer doing what he's doing? Is he motivated by the race of George Floyd? Is he scared for his own safety? Is he just a rookie? Or is it appropriate? What's going on here?
I mean, it's hard to say. And I'm sure there's a lot of factors. It might not just be one. Could it be because George Floyd is black? Sure. Could it be because of a lack of training? Sure. Is he scared? Maybe. I don't know. And there's a lot that goes on in an officer's head when you're making an arrest. I mean, he certainly has no idea who George Floyd is or what he's capable of. But at the same time, this is the reality. We're talking about a forgery investigation, and he walks up with a gun drawn, pointing it in his face, and there's no perceptible threat. He doesn't have a knife or a gun or anything like that. So I think it's safe to say that he's definitely acting outside the norm of how an officer should act in a situation like this.
All right, now let's take a look at another piece of the video. Here it is where George Floyd is now handcuffed, trying to get him into the squad car.
I'm going.
No, you're not.
I gotta go in.
Take a seat.
Grab a seat, man.
Man, y'all don't believe me, Mr. Officer.
Take a seat.
I'm not that kind of guy. I'm not that kind of guy, man.
Take a seat.
Y'all, I'm gonna die in here.
Take a seat.
I'm gonna die, man.
You need to take a seat right now.
And I just had COVID, man. I don't want to go back to that.
Okay, I'll roll the windows
No.
down. Hey, listen.
Dang, man.
Listen.
I'm not that kind of guy. I'm claustrophobic.
You ain't gonna win.
I'm claustrophobic and I got anxiety. I don't want to do nothing to them.
I'll roll the window down.
Man, I'm scared as man.
You
When I start breathing, it's gonna go off on me, man.
Pull your legs in.
Okay. Let me count to 3. Let me count to 3 and I'm going in. Please. I'm not trying to win. I get on the ground, anything. I can't stand this, man.
All right, Sarah Flack, George Floyd is in an excited, agitated state. I don't know the reason why. How important is the reason why when and if we have a trial for these 4 officers? Is it relevant from your perspective?
I do think it's relevant. I mean, if there are some mental health issues, all of those are things that are important and are relevant, especially for police when they enter a scene. You don't know they don't know what they're arriving at. And it's their job, it's their duty to assess the scene and not escalate it the way that they did. There was no sort of questioning or de-escalation. It was just immediate violence and anger and aggression. And if you have somebody in a state such as George Floyd, I mean, he clearly was upset, he was scared, and who may have some issues going on, that is not how you respond appropriately. And any person in George Floyd's position would have acted the same way. We see it all day, every day. So it absolutely is relevant. And now whether or not it matters as to whether or not they're guilty, but it certainly is relevant because that's their duty as officers. They are here to protect and serve all of us.
I want to take a listen to Thomas Lane. Again, he is the first officer on the scene. He's the rookie. He's the one who pulled the gun. After all this takes place, before this becomes the George Floyd case, he kind of explains what just happened inside the ambulance to the EMT. Take a listen to this, Sudi, because I want to hear from you whether you think his statement to the EMT before this is the George Floyd case, before he's charged with murder, is going to help him or hurt him.
Lane?
Yep.
This yours?
Yeah. Nope.
All right, what was going on?
It was a forgery report.
Yep.
And he was just not compliant with getting out of the car.
Okay.
We were trying to get him in the back of the squad.
Okay.
And he was just basically resisting.
Yep.
He wasn't showing us his hands at first. Then we were trying to get him in the squad. He kicked his way out. He was kicking on there. And we came out the other side, and he was fighting us, and we were just basically restraining him until you guys got here.
Okay. 412, state where location is going to be park. Yeah, you did CPR.
All right.
And 30.
All right, Sudi, is that going to make it easier or more difficult for prosecutors to go after Thomas Lane for murder, the rookie?
Well, to be honest, I think it's going to make it harder. Why? Because when we talk about these officers not being properly trained, I don't believe that they are properly trained. They're trained to say all those keywords that people want to hear so they can be justified, so they can be excused. The keywords of he wasn't complying, he was resisting, just like when you see them pull him out of the car. I saw the video. I saw a guy that was scared, but they keep yelling at him, you're resisting, you're resisting, you're resisting. That's what they're doing. They're being properly trained so they can lay the foundation to justify their violence.
Sarah, in what you just heard Thomas Lane say, did he lie? Did he leave out facts? What did you hear as he gave his explanation to the EMT?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that we got the full picture, Vinny. We don't know all that happened, and he didn't tell everything that happened. And I think that what I don't know is what all he knew in terms of before they stopped Mr. Floyd. So I think all of that will come out at the appropriate time.
Michael Bixon, if Thomas Lane gets up on the witness stand, do you cross-examine him with that prior statement, or are there other questions? How do prosecutors go after him if and when he takes the stand?
Well, I mean, the big point here is whether or not he was resisting. And sure, you can cross him on it, but I thank God that they had body cams on, because without that, this would be a totally different story. Now, if I was a prosecutor, would I cross him on it? Sure. I think it's relevant. I think it's important. I think it's something that should be brought up. But again, I think the video camera tells the full story, and I think that's what they really should be paying attention to.
Suri, as you look at this video, At the end of the day, the defense wanted the video out. The prosecution didn't want it released. Who's better off right now?
I think that this helps the prosecution. I think that this helps justice and the public. There's some arguments that this is going to taint the jury. How is the truth? How is what actually happened going to taint a jury? This reminds me of that case we had down here in Georgia, in South Georgia, where the people that murdered somebody in cold blood wanted the video released because in their head, they think they did the right thing. In their head, all their actions were justified. They live in this bubble and they forget that we're watching. The world is watching, and we will not tolerate this type of action. We will not tolerate them abusing citizens just because they wear a badge. I mean, I do like one quote that he says. Mr. Floyd says, "I didn't know what was going on." And he says, "You listen to us and we will tell you what's going on." They're the authority, and we must be subservient to them in their mind, but not anymore. Things are changing.
When we come back, a murder in Milwaukee. Was a man shot and killed because he was merely exercising his freedom of speech? We'll talk about that when we return.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. This is your legal news break. I'm Julia Janae. Prosecutors in Aurora, Colorado are investigating whether officers should face charges following this viral video incident. Take a look.
There's kids. They had guns on kids.
That's the cell phone footage that captured Brittany Gillum and several of her young family members, including a 6-year-old who were placed on the ground during a traffic stop. The older girls were handcuffed while police conducted that high-risk stop, thinking that it was a stolen vehicle. This was later determined to be a mix-up. The license plate happened to match one belonging to a stolen motorcycle with the same number, but for a different state. The 18th Judicial District Attorney called the incident very disturbing and said if it's determined that those officers committed a crime, he won't hesitate to prosecute. And the Girl Scouts of USA is subject to a lawsuit in New York now, one that the filing attorney says is the first of its kind against the organization. Plaintiff Alice Weiss Russell alleges that the husband of her troop leader back in the 1980s sexually abused her when she was just 11 years old. The 48-year-old woman claims the abuse happened in the bathroom of a basement of a church during troop meetings. The lawsuit accuses the youth organization of failing to protect her. The complaint comes on the heels of a bill that was signed by New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. It temporarily lifts the time limits on reporting child abuse under the state's Child Victims Act. Weiss Russell says Girl Scouts violated its own policies by allowing her alleged abuser to be a male volunteer leader of her troop. And the divorce case between Hollywood A-listers Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt is far from over. Jolie is requesting the private judge disqualify himself from the case after failing to disclose business relationships with one of Pitt's attorneys. Pitt and Jolie are paying for a private judge in order to keep details of their divorce private. The couple was officially declared divorced back in April of last year after they received a bifurcated judgment, which means they're technically single while they continue to wrap up financial and child custody issues. Jolie and Pitt were married for 12 years and have 6 children between them. That's it for your legal news break. Benny, back to you.
All right. In the interim, I just hope the kids are doing okay at the end of the day. Thanks,
Absolutely.
Julie. All right. There's a story out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Right now, it's a murder mystery. And one of the other questions is what motivated this murder, because it looks like it was a hit. Ted Rowlands has the story tonight.
Milwaukee police are still looking for the person who killed 60-year-old Burnell Trammell in broad daylight. It was July 23rd. He was outside his small business, Expressions Journal. Trammell's publication focused on political and spiritual news.
He had a right to have his voice, and he was so strong to do it alone.
Trammell was often seen in the eclectic and diverse River West neighborhood of Milwaukee. He would hold large, handwritten signs with his personal beliefs in big, bold letters. Signs in support of George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, police reform, and even President Donald Trump. Neighbors say he was sitting in a lawn chair when he was shot.
I walked to his shop and he was sitting outside in a white chair, like he was waiting for me to come there.
Adebisi Agoro, who runs the website thegoddegree.com, interviewed Trammell just hours before the shooting, hoping to give him a platform to express his political views.
I hadn't seen him in the public with a pro-Trump sign ever, so I got curious. I gave him a man the floor, a misunderstood character the floor to speak his opinion.
It's not clear if his politics had anything to do with his murder, but the hunt is on for the suspect. Police are looking for a man believed to be in his 30s, last seen wearing a white and red baseball cap, a black mask, a black and red long-sleeve shirt, riding a black bicycle. Trammell's friends are left wondering why he was killed.
I would hope that people think that this is a senseless murder and that a good man died here.
His senseless death leaving his friends struggling with the loss.
We lost a man who cared about people, even if they were different than him, especially different than him. I can't.
And he's a man. I mean, his life was about expressing himself and expressing his thoughts and his views and making these signs. And someone took him out. And is it possible that the motivation was something that he put on a sign? Really? Let's bring back in our think tank. Sarah Flack, this would, to me, this would really, it's a horrible, horrible death to begin with, because this guy, he's one of those neighborhood guys. And if he was shot and killed and basically assassinated for exercising his freedom of speech, which is the absolute foundation of our nation, to me, this is beyond outrageous.
Vinny, I could not agree with you more. For the record, I want the record to reflect that. I could not agree with you more. I mean, there's no reason that this poor man should have been killed for any reason at all, and certainly not for expressing his beliefs. He's free to believe and say and do what he wants. And if we live in a country that justifies doing that, none of us would have rights. So it's just completely awful. And I would hope that that's not why he was killed. It's terrible.
Sudi, I have my suspicions, but I don't know. They're investigating it. It looks like they have a suspect. Perhaps if they find the suspect and find that he is responsible, they'll get to the bottom of this. But to me, that would be a real major setback to what we are as a society and who we are. Isn't the whole basis of what we can do is that we can say whatever we want, like we do here on the program every night, without fear of violence because of something that we said?
We have freedoms, and sadly some people get very offended, and then they take their anger, and there's a lot of issues. What I do have a small problem with here is that there's so much focus on one sign, one set of signs that he's using, when really he had a variety of signs. He went across the spectrum. He is a true independent thinker. And so we actually don't know the motivations, and I would hate to speculate as to which one of those many signs, if any, motivated this.
Yeah. Michael Bixon, it doesn't matter to me which of the signs it is. To me, he was a man kind of in the same business that I'm in, right? He's someone who likes to speak his mind, has something to say, and wants people to hear it. That's one of the reasons I'm on television. And this is the reason that he had his shop, why he was in that neighborhood, and why he's making signs, whether it's George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, Trump 2020, whatever it is. And if someone disagrees with what you have to say, why can't we just have a conversation about it or a debate about it rather than resorting to violence?
No, I completely agree with you, which is a rarity, but I do, especially for this. And I think it's great that he was able to express his opinions. And, the neighborhood knew him as this guy who they could come and talk to about anything. And it wasn't just Trump that he supported, to be clear. He also supported Democrats. He also supported Black Lives Matters. He was all across the spectrum in what he believed in, and he was very vocal about it. And I think that's wonderful. And if this murder is somehow related to his beliefs, to his signs, I think it's that much more despicable. And, hopefully they're able to catch the guy. Hopefully they're able to solve this thing.
Well, they've got the photo. I mean, it's a great way to start, right? We're going to continue to track this investigation. Any updates, of course, we'll let you know right here on Court TV. When we come back, though, it's time to hear from you, our 13th juror. Your reaction to the dramatic video that was released and unsealed by the court in Minneapolis, and, of course, shown to you by Court TV, the George Floyd body cam video. Your reaction next.
Please, both hands. Do nothing. Put your hands up right now. Let me see your other hand.
All right. What I do though? What do we do?
Put your hand up there. Put your hand up there. Jesus Christ. Keep your hands on the wheel.
I don't know if you noticed in that part of the video, but if you look in the reflection in the window, you can see when the gun is actually pulled out, and it's not pulled out initially, but then it does, and then it does come out. He doesn't walk up to the car with the gun. He's got his hand by there and then pulls it out. Anyhow, an amazing reaction online to the video. And let's begin with our 13th juror comment of the day, coming from Aaron tonight, who writes, "Listen, I support officers, and I know that most of them are good men and women with the right intentions. What happened to George Floyd was a crime and should be prosecuted as such. Do I think they wanted to kill him? Absolutely not. But neither does a drunk driver usually." Sarah Flack, let me ask you, what do you think the state of mind was of police officers, and how is that going to be relative to the murder charges here?
Well, I think you have to take them one by one, Vinny. I mean, we'll start with the officer who kneed and killed Mr. Floyd. I don't know that he intentionally, I can't say that he intentionally killed him, but what I can say is he intentionally put his knee on his neck and did it for 8 minutes. And so whether or not he wanted to hurt him or subdue him or seriously harm him, doesn't matter. He did the act, he did it intentionally, and he did it knowing that that could cause a serious injury. So you have to look at the intention of every officer individually. In this case, and that's exactly what they'll do, because they can't try them all together. The culpability is for each and every single defendant, and the state will have to prove that for each of them, separate and apart.
Chloe tonight writes, and I think I pronounced it right, I think it's Chloe, no change. His neck shouldn't have had a knee put into it. He had already said he couldn't breathe before Chauvin pinned his neck. Being high or mentally ill is no excuse to murder a suspect unless the police were afraid for their lives, which they sure didn't seem to be. Maybe he was so scared and frantic because he could foresee what was going to happen to him. Sudi, let me ask you. He's talking about not being able to breathe before he's on the ground, before there's a knee on his neck. What does that mean? What does a jury take away from that? If at the time that he is still standing up, he is saying, I can't breathe?
Well, what that means, it depends on how the prosecution frames it. And the way I would frame it, if I was the prosecutor going in this case, is he definitely cannot breathe. Why? Because he's having a panic attack. He is having a post-traumatic episode. He is telling them, first thing that comes out of his mouth, this has happened to me before. I've been shot before like this. He is in so much fear, and the officer doesn't care. The officer doesn't say, no, you know what? That's not going to happen. I just want to talk to you. No, he says, I can't even say it because we're on TV. I can't say it. But he starts saying explicit after explicit language, explicit, F this and F that and F that. How can you breathe when you are in fear of your life because you have had this same experience before? That situation, when I get nervous, I can't breathe. So, and then the defense is going to frame it as he's making it up. Why would the officers believe anything that comes out of his mouth when he's making it up? They even make fun of him at one point when he's on the ground. One of the officers says, takes a lot of oxygen to say that. I mean, come on, they're mocking him. They never believed him because they didn't want to believe him. And I for what the viewer said, the officers were not afraid of him. Yes, they were. They're terrified of him. The moment they saw him, they were just scared. They saw this man that if it was one-on-one, you could have taken them. But no, they had to use their force and take advantage of that.
Linda tonight, I think he had medical issues and stress helped elevate the situation. Evidently, he was on something. Sad he was restrained in a hold so long. I think he was drugged and having a panic attack. Michael Bixon, the drugs in his system. We know there are drugs in his system. He's asked, what are you on? How does that play into everything that is going to be before a jury? These are murder charges.
I'm sure the defense is going to bring them up, but at the same time, I don't think it's super relevant. I mean, we saw the actual levels, and they are very, very, very low. So did he have drugs in his system? Yes. But again, the ultimate question is, does that give the police a right to murder him? And the answer is absolutely not. It doesn't matter that he had drugs. It doesn't matter that he was resisting. The police do not have a license to kill. People need to understand it does not matter if you are resisting. If you have drugs in your system, the police can't execute you. Now, if there's some imminent threat, if they're in danger, if you're pointing a gun, a knife, if you're threatening your lives, totally different. None of that happened here. And I think that's crucial for the case for the state.
Brittany, it doesn't matter what he did. They should have never put their knees on him that long. After he was restrained in handcuffs, he should have been standing up. And the beginning of it, you can tell he is scared for his life. The first thing out of his mouth is sorry. And they are just agitating the situation by yelling and swearing at him. Sarah Flack, this is what you were talking about right at the top of the hour. And I'll tell you what, the 13th juror is with you on that, Sarah. They are really concerned, and a lot of it is tone, demeanor, and approach here.
Absolutely, Vinny. I mean, at the end of the day, these are human beings. This is a human business. People are not robots. And so if somebody approaches you with a gun drawn, multiple officers, and they're yelling and cursing and screaming, the only natural human response is what George Floyd did. He's not superhuman. He's a human being. And they need to approach, or they need to go back and retrain all officers on de-escalation and ways to approach people. That is not the way to do it. We see it time and time again. You approach somebody like that, and then they respond in a way that you don't like. And then next thing we know, we've got another person that's dead at the hands of the police. It's a huge problem, and there's a lot of training and work that needs to be done.
Rick writing tonight, George put himself down on the ground. His state of panic doesn't make sense. He's also claiming to be claustrophobic, but he just got out of a car of the same size. I am so sad he acted like this. Just terrible. Sudi, let me ask you, that claustrophobia, how does that make sense? And what do you think is behind him saying he's claustrophobic if he was just inside a car parked with the window closed, doesn't want to go into a squad car with the window open?
I'm not a doctor. I don't know exactly the symptoms of claustrophobia, but I do know that if I am in my car, I can open the door and leave whenever I want to. If you're placed in a cop car, you can't. The reality, though, is that if you commit a crime, even if you're claustrophobic, you're going to be put in a tiny car, and then you're going to be put in a tiny cell, because that's how our society treats human beings. We put them in cages. However, that does not mean that you retaliate. Yes, he's being combative. Yes, he's saying a lot of nonsense. Yes, you're frustrated with him. You don't need to then show him who's boss by putting your knee on him, because that's what they were doing. They were standing on top of him to show him they are the authority and you should have complied. No, we're not kids. They're not little toddlers that are just going to be in tit for tat. Once you got him restrained, if he's still resisting, you step back. He's not going to run. Where's he going to go? And then you keep watching.
Sudi, Chara Jimenez, Sarah Flack, Michael Bixon, awesome job tonight. Thank you so much for your insight on this important night here on Court TV. Really do appreciate it. All right, folks, that's when we bring in the A-listers. All right, a lot more to talk about. We'll be here tomorrow night. Have a great night. Don't forget to hug the kids.